Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beer and Money. My name is Ryan Burklow.
And I'm Alex Collins.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about whether or not you should pay cash for a new car or take a loan.
This is something that we get questions on all the time.
Even more so because of where interest rates have gone. A year ago or 2 years ago, we weren't getting this as much, but we still got it. But now we're getting it a lot more. So we thought we can't answer this obviously for every listener right now, right? Because as the compliant statement we will state is, well, it depends, right? Because we don't know your financial situation. We are going to talk about three different variables that you should consider that should help you decide which one makes the most sense for you. But before we dive into it, Alex, what are you drinking today?
Today, I am drinking a Devotion. It's a blonde ale from Lost Abbey down in California. Clocks in at 6%. I don't have the IBUs in front of me. They're not going to be very high because it's a blonde.
Yep. Lost Abbey is a good one. They make good beer.
It is. I pretty much anything that Lost Abbey puts out, I enjoy. This is a light, refreshing beer. It's a little bit hefty for a blonde, which is one of the reasons why I like it. It's also packs a punch at 6%. But this is a great summer beer. It's just kind of a good, have a beer in the afternoon and still able to function and do everything that you need to do or want to do.
What's your bottle cap rating?
I love this beer. I'm giving it an 8.
Yeah, I definitely would give it an 8. That's one of my, I've had that quite a bit. And to your point, I like how it's heavier a little bit more and packs that punch. So
yeah,
I like that piece. Definitely try them out. If you're listening and you haven't had it before, try them out. So Alex, let's get into today's conversation, right? Because, you know, I get random questions all the time. I mean, just the other day, I got a question around like, hey, do you happen to know an employment lawyer? Right? Like, it's amazing the different questions that we get. But the top question we're getting as of late is pay for the car in cash or take a loan out on it. And right, it really depends on how you look financially and the feasibility of it, right? So the first thing I want to dive into, at least in my opinion here, Alex, is the cash flow aspect, right?
yeah.
What if you take the loan? Can you afford the monthly payment of the loan?
Which sounds like a really, really, really basic question. But let's dive into it a little bit further. Like, are you still able to have that 15 to 20% savings rate? Are you still able to live the life that you want to live? If the answer is yes, great.
Yep.
Then now the question becomes not can you afford it? It's which way is more effective, which kind of skips down to our last component.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the last component too, but the first component you need to look at is from a cash flow perspective, can you afford it? What is it eating into? Is it eating into your savings? Is it eating into your lifestyle? And maybe you're okay with that, right? Maybe you're subsidizing one piece where you're spending a bunch of money and putting it towards the car payment. I'm not sure, but that's what you should be looking at as cash flow aspects.
I mean, I recently had a client ask me like, "Hey, am I crazy to spend this much money on a car?" And I was like, "All right, well, is it going to prevent you from protecting your income?" He goes, "No." Okay. Is it going to prevent you from saving 20% of your income? No. Is it going to give you enjoyment? Is it what you want to spend money on? Yes.
There you
Cool.
go.
We're good.
Yep.
Now the only question is what's the methodology for paying for it?
Which takes us to number two, which what I'd labeled as flexibility, right? Like, what flexibility are you going to still have if you do it? So we brought up in the first example, the cash flow, like maybe you can afford the loan, but you're tapping into savings, or you're taking a little bit too much. So you're adding a little bit more of a monthly debt than you probably should, which is going to affect the flexibility you might need or want.
Yeah, like what happens when the unexpected occurs, because it's going to. We don't know whether it's going to be good. We don't know if it's going to be bad. We don't know if it's going to be big or small. We know that something unexpected is going to happen because it always does.
And conversely, let's just say you can afford the loan, but you're having to tap into your emergency fund, and maybe your emergency fund is almost depleted. Okay, again, what flexibility do you still have? And what Alex just said, because stuff will happen, both good and bad. Would you want that money sitting there? Right?
Right.
Because I think a lot of people, like, I hear this all the time, and it's not that it's bad necessarily. The issue is we can't predict the future. And what people say is, well, Ryan, I'm going to take $30,000 out. I've got X amount, like I'm making up figures here, $30,000, and now I'm going to buy the car in cash. Okay, what does that do to your emergency fund? Well, it pretty much dips it down to where I've got maybe a month of expenses sitting there, but
Eek.
I can rebuild that in like 12 months. While that statement is 100% accurate, it's only accurate if nothing else comes up. And
And it
it
might
doesn't have to
be
be bad, by the way.
right.
It could be good. Then when you,
Like right. And one like the so like okay, what do we do with that circumstance? The question becomes okay, how important is it to buy the car now versus buying the car in
yes,
3 months, in 6 months? Is there a different way that we can structure the deal? Is there like what how can we make it work for you while at the same time protecting that flexibility and the cash flow um and the liquidity? Because like it's really like that's what it boils down to is like okay, did you paint yourself into a corner? Hopefully
yep,
not.
yep. Which then takes us to, and we labeled this feasibility, which is more of, okay, let's just say you've decided that you've got the cash flow. The issue isn't you can afford the monthly payment. The issue is now, does it make sense to pay for it in cash? Right. And so really the question you should be asking yourself is, okay, so if you're going to take out 50,000, 30,000, whatever the figure is to pay for the car in cash, what would that money have done for you? Where are you pulling the money from? And what would have done for you had you not taken it out versus taking out the loan? Like, let's just do a real quick example here, Alex. Like, I think car interest rates right now are, I mean, I think you can get a new car interest rate at like 2.9 or 3.9 on some of them, if I'm not mistaken. But let's just use let's use a 5% interest rate. Let's just take it one step above, right? It's 5% interest rate on the car, which I think is in the middle ground. It's going to take 5%. Where are you pulling it from? Right? If you're pulling it from savings, well, what's the money doing in savings? What interest rate do you expect on that? So let's walk through how they should look at this, Alex.
Sure. So, okay, let's, if you've got high yield savings right now, you should be getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5%. This is early July of 2023. Every bank is going to be different. You may not be getting a high yield savings. Like, there's a host of different, like, rates that are out there. There's a bunch of different ways of comparing rates. We'll leave that to you, but like what we're seeing right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5% as the interest rates that we're seeing credited to like money markets and high yield savings accounts. Um, so if the rate is 5% and you're able to get 5%, it's kind of a wash. I would almost 100% rather keep the cash, create the payment, and then if interest rates drop, you've got the cash to be able to pay it off.
So walk through that a little bit further, right? Because some people might go the opposite way and say, well, I don't want to deal with a monthly payment and the debt. Why are you, Alex, suggesting? By the way, I would think the exact same way you are. I'd rather have it sitting in savings. Why?
Having more flexibility, more liquidity, more ability to deal with whatever life throws at you. And like, who knows? Maybe like if interest rate, like once you've locked in the rate at say 5% on the auto loan, if rates continue to go up and now you're getting 6% on your savings account, well, okay, pay 5, earn 6. Yes, I will do that all day long,
Yep.
especially if it's guaranteed.
Yep.
Like you're just arbitraging that 1% difference. If interest rates go down, like, okay, I've got the cash in the bank. I can just write a check and not have to worry about it. And now it's just paid off. So it's a heads I win, tails I don't lose type proposition. You have to have the the ability to uh, not spend money. So like think of whatever the dollars are that you're allocating towards this as like out of sight, out of mind. But beyond that, yeah, like you're in much better shape.
So let's take it a step further. So let's say the interest rate is still 5, but let's just say the savings account's only getting you 2 or 3 or something like that. So now there is that difference. Then what?
Sure. Um, so I mean, the first question that I'd usually ask is like, okay, if it's only earning you two, and clearly you're comfortable spending the money, why is the money still sitting in savings? So role play a little bit
Yeah,
with me, right?
that's
What?
that's making. So let's. I will role play it with you, and most of the time it's going to look like this. I'm going to role play like real life. With it's probably looking like. So I'm going to tell you, say, well, it's 5% interest rate. I'm only getting 3% in my savings account. I'm going to take the money from my savings account and I'm going to buy the car.
Okay. Well, so what would the money do if you weren't going to use it for the car? Would it just sit in the savings account?
Yeah, because it's really my emergency fund. It's part of my
Okay.
emergency
So
fund.
so are you digging into your emergency fund then to
Yep.
pay for this?
Yep.
How like okay, what how low on your emergency fund are you going there?
I'm going to have like maybe a month and a half of expenses sitting there.
Okay. So what happens if something goes wrong like during that time period and now you
Well,
have
it's only
to
going to take me, we already role played this, but it's only going to take me like 10 months to build it back up.
sure, what happens if something occurs during that 10 months? Like where is it that you're pulling money from to fix that issue? And if you're already comfortable pulling the money to get down that skinny on your emergency reserve, maybe we should like you shouldn't be comparing it to that 3% savings rate. You should be comparing it to wherever you would stick the money if you're not going to do this,
Yep.
which is usually a much higher interest rate. We usually wind up with like somewhere between a 4 and a 6, maybe even a 7% time value of money calculation for opportunity cost. Because you're always going to go to like, okay, I've got an extra dollar. What's the best purpose for that dollar?
Yeah. So then that takes us to the next role play. So let's just say I had excess in my emergency fund, right? Let's just say I'm actually putting extra money in my savings account and it's actually got the majority of the extra money is going to go to the car now, right? To your
Good.
point
So,
that you just brought up, okay, should it have been sitting in your emergency fund? And the answer to that question might be yes,
right.
right? Because there might be a valid question. It might be like Alex. My answer could be, well, Alex, my pay is very variable, so I have months where I go down. So I might tap into that like in a month or two because I know that my income's not going to be as high. So yeah, I needed that high,
And with
or
that type of a
the other way around.
scenario, we typically want it to have those extra dollars so that we can go through a couple of those lean months. So I'm less likely to want to part with the dollars to pay down a loan in that particular circumstance. Now, if
Yep.
you tell me, like, hey, Alex, I saved up with the express purpose of buying a car in cash, okay, great. Let's double check and make sure that that's still the best use of those dollars. And that's really just a time value of money calculation of like, okay, if you invest the dollars instead of spending them on the car, what rate, like, what's your expected return long term?
Right, right. And that depends on risk profile. There's a lot into that. And this is where I think people aren't really looking at the true cost of everything, right? So I just did some real quick math here. So $40,000 loan, 5% interest rate is $755 a month. So over a 5 year, and that's for a 5 year loan, 60-month loan. So over 60 months, you would spend 45,300. So you spend an additional $5,000. So the question is in 5 years, what risk profile can you make up to 5,000? Should we be looking at 5 years? Like there's a bunch of conversation in there. And this is how people should be looking at it.
Well, and the other thing, Ryan, is that it's not a one or a zero. Like, you don't have to put down 100% of the money or
Yep.
zero. You can absolutely like figure out like, oh, hey, yeah, no, like I need my monthly payment to be like $300 a month as opposed to 500. Okay, how much do I have to put down? Does that work? If the answer is yes, then great, do it that way as opposed to like worrying about like trying to come up with the full down payment, the full payment, or like trying to figure out how to finance the full amount and like winding up with a payment that doesn't fit your lifestyle. Like
Yep.
there's ways to split it in half or a third or whatever else. You just got to figure it out and like run with it yourself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people, when they hear, but they're so interest rate conscious that I think a lot of people, I'm guessing when I told them it's only an additional 5 grand that you'd spend over that 5 year time horizon. And people listening, please don't take that like, wow, Ryan doesn't really care about money. 5 grand's a lot of money. That's not what I'm saying. I think most people think it's a lot more than 5 grand is the point that I'm stating, because they haven't actually
Right.
sat down to do the math of what the true cost is.
Or sat down and figured out like, hey, if I put that into an investment, what do I expect to return from that investment over that same time period?
Yep. Yeah, because if you kept the $40,000 and grew it at 3%, your future value in 5 years is 46,000.
Yeah.
So I think this might come across, Alex, as we're suggesting to never take the car loan. And that's not what we're saying. I think the big piece that you and I are constantly aware of is flexibility should be there. And the true cost of interest, especially on a car loan, isn't that big. Now, emotionally, right, I think debt can be so stressful. And if that's the case, if you really stress over having that debt, this is a much different conversation. This is more of like numbers conversation, not emotions.
Right. Well, and like some people just really don't like having a car payment or don't like having to owe people money or whatever else. And think, okay, cool.
Yep.
If that's you, just save it up and do it differently.
Yep. Yeah, this is not a
But
one size fits all, but this is bringing to light the true cost and cash flow aspect of purchasing a car, either via loan or via cash.
for sure.
Which takes us to the question of the day, Alex.
We don't actually have a question of the day today, Ryan. At
Well, we
least not
do
yet.
know. So, question of the day: the last time you bought a car, what formula, what exercise did you go through to figure out how to buy it? Either somewhat, maybe some version of a loan, like 50% paid in cash. Like, how did you figure out what to do to buy the car? Head over to beerandmoney.net. There's a contact us page. I'd actually love to hear this question answered, because I think we'll get a bunch of different exercises that people do. Or maybe we'll get none, and maybe people don't analyze it the way that you and I are analyzing it right now. I'm not
Well,
sure.
in the spirit of transparency, why don't we each answer that question as well? So the last car that I bought, we wound up took a look at getting a lease. We took a look at buying it outright, and we took a look at financing it. And ultimately, we decided that financing was the least costly route. So we wound up, yeah, we put I want to say like 5K down, and then financed the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, we did a very similar thing where we analyzed the exact same. It's pretty much the exact same scenario you just did, and we're a big fan of flexibility. And so, what's interesting about that is the leases come and due here, and I'm going to buy the car, but I'm actually still going to take the loan on the car, just because I like sitting on that cash. Like, you just never know. Now, it's not just sitting in cash earning a 2 or 3%, right? It's earning closer to 6%. But the point of the matter is I like that sense of security. I also love the flexibility of that aspect. So that's how we chose it. Beardmoney.net. Love to hear everyone else's. So at the top, contact us. Look, we hope this episode was valuable for you. We started this podcast to help you look at your money from a different perspective, and hopefully from a perspective of like actually enjoying and having action items from this. I think Alex and I understand that financial advisors, we love to talk in jargon and talk spreadsheet. Hopefully we don't come across that way. Um, but we want you to be financially free from the standpoint of not stressing over it so that you can be free to be with your family and really be in the moment. So we hope this episode was valuable for you. And as always, Mr. Collins.
Cheers.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Quantified Financial Partners, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. This material is intended for general public use. By providing this content, Park Avenue Securities LLC is not undertaking to provide investment advice or a recommendation for any specific individual or situation, or to otherwise act in a fiduciary capacity. Please contact a representative for guidance and information that is specific to your individual situation. Ryan and Alex are registered representatives and financial advisors of Park Avenue Securities LLC, OSJ 200 Market Street, Suite 1850, Portland, Oregon 97201. Phone number 503-221-1226. Securities products and advisory services offered through Park Avenue Securities member FINRA SIPC. Financial representatives of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Park Avenue Securities is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Quantified Financial Partners is not an affiliate or subsidiary of Park Avenue Securities or Guardian. Ryan Burklow, AR Insurance License Number 153-19412. CA Insurance License Number 0K24924. Alexander Collins, AR Insurance License Number 7264699. CA Insurance License Number 0H24806. Pinpoint Number 2023-159880. Expiration August 2025.